right, I think we could probably get started.
Okay, let's go ahead. You're ready with PowerPoint, right?
Yeah,
You
I'm
want-
going to put the PowerPoint on now. I'm going to share.
Okay, very good. I just want to welcome all of you to the 440 Gallery Artist Talk for the two new shows at the gallery. Robin Roi has the solo show, Short Stories, and these are some of the installation shots. And in our project space, the show is Movement, featuring Joanne Acey, Juliet Martin, and K Sarrantonio. And these shows are on view at the gallery through Sunday, May 30th. So be sure to swing by and actually see them. As beautiful as things look online, they are so much richer and more engaging in person. So if you are nearby, please come and see the work. This is Robin Roi's first solo show at 440 Gallery. So we're very excited about that. And also in the project space, we're featuring two new gallery artists who are showing as gallery members for the first time. So don't miss, those are K Sarrantonio and Juliet Martin. And we also have a longtime member, Joanne Acey, whose work always inspires joy. So we have lots of good work here. Let's see, if you, as I'm filling in for Karen, so just want to make sure I hit all the points. So if you have questions for the artists, please either put them in the chat or hold them until the question and answer period at the end of the presentations. And we'll begin with Robin Roi's short stories. So we've been looking at some of the installation shots and now maybe the individual works in the show.
I believe these are still the installation shots.
Okay.
Getting there.
While you're doing that, I want to read a paragraph about Robin's work because I think it's a very beautiful introduction, which is that consisting of intricately patterned surfaces that are embedded with imaginative narratives, Robin Roi's pieces are layered and collaged with vintage papers she collects, such as wallpaper, dressmaker tissue paper patterns, Japanese grocery store lists, and other ephemera. Paint, drawing materials, and mark making is used to create richly textured works on paper. And in the artist's words, and I quote, "I often refer to my paintings as narrative patterns, referencing my passion and love of both storytelling and the realm of pattern making. By using pattern in the most inclusive way possible, it exists not merely as a decorative device, but as a way of seeing and understanding the world." So that's an introduction to Robin's show. And Robin, I just wanted to ask you a few questions, maybe if you could just enlighten us even more about this work. So you call your show Short Stories. Can you expand on that?
Well, I think there's a narrative going on throughout this series, and sometimes the story is more obvious and more, I guess you might say, illustrative or illustrative, and sometimes it's a more subtle thing where maybe the narrative is only what I see and what I put into it. And could be possibly more abstract and more devoted to pattern. But in this, and certainly in this series where there are two people sitting at a table, it's called Table Talk, there is a very strong narrative. So I'm just interested in the backstory. I'm always interested in the backstory, and a lot of people say that, well, or ask me, is it autobiographical? And my response is that I think everything an artist does is autobiographical, even when it's abstract. I think we're pulling from our lives, from what we see, what we hear, what we know, and trying to give it to an audience.
Absolutely. And also exposing ourselves and the intricacies and the depths of our feeling. I think that's really a good point. And these works are really extraordinary, both for their complexity of design and the complexity of content. And could you tell us a little bit about the process of creating this tabletop series? And this is a very special series, and I know it started a long time ago.
Yeah, well, this particular series, yes, I did the initial drawings for these when I was at an artist residency at Yaddo in 1981. And so I did these as pastel drawings, and they didn't have any of the pattern. They just had sort of that basic storyline, you know, the two people sitting at a table and trying to communicate, and for the most part failing. And so then this many years later, because I started working on them again a couple of years ago, I just saw them in a much deeper way, and I added all that patterning. I also added a lot of the architectural details that they didn't necessarily have earlier. Particularly, I don't know, there's a green one that, can you go to that one? There's a lot of architecture there that got further developed. So they all were further developed. But in a general way, not just about this series, but in a general way, a lot of the time, the way I begin my drawings or paintings, I never quite know what category to put them in. But a lot of times I'm really randomly putting in collage. Lots of, as you mentioned earlier, lots of those collections of papers that I have over the years. And I kind of layer them up. And as I'm layering up with this collage, the grocery lists and the Japanese writing and love letters from my aunt's boyfriend and all kinds of ephemera, I begin to see how the drawing should develop and where it should go and how it should be laid out. And that's a very intuitive process. That's not really thought out.
Yeah. And they don't, when you see them in person, you don't immediately read them as collages because they're so delicately done that they don't, the collage aspects of it are practically invisible.
Yeah, I really, that's the thing I really love about doing these collages. I want them to seem kind of magical. I want you to see the layers without thinking, oh, that's a collage, you know, that's just pasted on. It's very, very integrated.
That's great. So you've talked about your love of pattern and decoration, and it's clearly evident in all of this work, but some seems to be narrative or very clearly directly narrative, while others are more decorative and abstract. And is there a difference for you as an artist when you're working on these pieces?
Not really. Just sometimes I think the narrative or storyline is just more obscured, and maybe you know, I don't know whether the narrative is embedded in the pattern or the pattern is embedded in the narrative. It is a real push-pull. And I guess I like it when I don't know. I mean, truthfully, it does not make a big difference to me which is more prominent. So I think that's just an accidental, like this one is really based on other drawings that I've done of my, believe it or not, of my living room. And so in what looks like a random, crazy, abstract pattern is actually a drawing of my living room with a pattern behind it. And certainly you can't see that online on your computer. That's why you have to go to the gallery. That's why you have to go see it in person. Yes. But so often, even though it may look abstract, there's a story there.
Well, yeah, and this looks like it has quite a story, and it looks like there's a story within a story in this one. Yeah, Definitely. Well, these are just fascinating. Is there anything else you wanted to say about your work, Robin? I know people will have questions later when we open things up, but is there anything else that you would like to say before we move on? Yeah, let's look at some of those other works,
This
Susan.
is actually the drawing of the living room that I
Ah,
spoke about, and you can see it sort of more clearly here.
yes.
But no, I mean, one thing I want to say, and this, by the way, everyone says how it looks Asian or Japanese or something, but really this is Maine. This is like looking at the dock over the lake while on vacation in Maine. The thing I do want to say is that now in my more seasoned years, I often will pull drawings and ideas from many, many years ago. And it's very rewarding to be able to take those things and those sometimes just a sketch or a faint idea and develop it further. And it's just something you can't do when you're a young artist because you don't have that history. You don't have that portfolio of hundreds of sketches and drawings and ideas that you've had over the years. So I just want to say that I am totally enjoying my mature years as an artist.
Wonderful, great. And it shows, and this is a wonderful, wonderful show. Robin has some work up in some other galleries in the city. And at the end of the talk, I'll share some of that. But there are other pieces from this series I noticed that are up in another gallery, or either that or I'm making it up. But
No, you're correct. You're correct.
I'm correct. Okay, good. I needed that. Thank you. Okay, great. Thank you so much, Robin. And please come. Robin, are you going to be in the gallery any times that you'd like to, if people want to come by and say hello to you or speak with you?
Well, I'm going to try to be there on Saturdays if I can. It sort of seems like it is a busy day. And I mean, at random, I will be there. I'll pop in, but I'm going to try to be there on Saturdays. I am going to Maine at the end of the show, so I'll be here throughout the show.
Great. And just a reminder that if you would like to see the artist in the gallery, you can always contact the artist, and the artist, make a separate arrangement to.
Yeah, I can always. I brought my brother and his wife to the gallery early this morning. Like 9 o'clock this morning. Right. So I can make arrangements to be there whenever you need to be there.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Great. So now we're going to move on to Movement, which is our 3-person show. Juliet Martin, Joanne Acey, and K Sarrantonio. And Movement is a 3-person exhibition of printmaking, painting, and weaving. And each artist embraced different attributes of movement while powerfully conveying a unique message through combinations of techniques and emotional impacts. And we're looking at some of the installation photos of this work.
Okay, and we're ready for Juliet.
Okay, Juliet. Are you ready for Juliet? Great. Okay, Juliet's showing 3 mixed media fiber pieces which incorporate text. And the title of the series is I Search for Flying and What I Get is Falling. And these pieces, Juliet, seem very personal. You call them fiber memoirs. Can you expand on that for us?
I found that I sort of either make up a situation or a situation that I've actually gone through myself. And I use that as a source to sort of explore emotions and outcomes, to let the viewer really see who I am and hopefully be able to see themselves in that situation as well. I find when I make these collections, there's usually 1 or 2 people who say, yes, that's how I felt. I felt that way too. And that is always the best response I can get. And so for these, I had been drawing these are drawings of myself doing gymnastics when I was 10 years old. And as I was doing them and rotating them around, I realized they almost, even though it was me as a child, there was something romantic about the spinning and the dropping.
And the freedom that can come from that.
Yes, yeah. I mean, I combine the weaving with machine-made fabric and use those to, bring them together, almost like quilting, in terms of piecing things together and using both the machine-made and the handmade accents, both of them very, very well, and brings out attributes that you wouldn't see as clearly if they were separate. If a piece is entirely woven, you almost don't appreciate it. And if you add in something machine made, all of a sudden you get this different perspective.
Well, that actually, you anticipated my next question, which was for you to tell us about your materials, because I know you use fabrics and fiber elements, and some of them are found and some of them are created. And I think what you just described, do you want to speak about, for instance, in this piece?
Yes. So I have a friend who is a textile designer, and she very generously gives me all of her remnants and all of her swatches. And it's kind of funny because she'll see a piece and say, oh, that was the fabric used in the airport. So she knows where all these came from and whose sofa that was on. But I like taking these upholstery, these really very geometric, design, almost designy pieces, and put them next to the hand woven pieces. And the hand woven also includes yarn that I spun and dyed as well. So.
And then the figures, can you tell us about those? Are those painted directly on the fabric, or are they printed? How is that?
I draw the figures. I scan them and bring them into Photoshop and manipulate them as how I want the colors to be, how I want the size to be, if I want to emphasize the eyes or the mouth. The faces that these particular characters had to begin with were much grumpier. And I decided I wanted to make them a little more playful. So I redid the face in Photoshop. And then I actually take those Photoshop files and use my inkjet printer to print them onto fabric.
Great. Wonderful. Thank you. And I just wanted to ask you about your work. I, in the interest of full disclosure, I've looked on her website. And so while we've seen these in the gallery, are there surprises ahead in your work as you get ready for your solo show in early next year at 440?
I'm very excited. I was talking about making up narratives and stories that are personal to me, almost in a way too personal, even though they're actually made up. They feel very internal. And in February, I have a new collection called You Make Me Sick. And that incorporates this whole idea that when you, let's say, are heartbroken or have some emotional trauma, you feel it physically. And so again, I'm sort of looking into my own life of like when I was heartbroken and how I could feel it in my bones. So that's sort of the direction I'm going through right now.
Great. Well, and when is your show? Is it next February?
It's February, yeah.
Great. We will look forward to that. So thank you so much. Let's see, should we move on to Joanne?
Oh, and I will be,
Yes.
I will be in the gallery on Saturday from 12 to 3.
Great, wonderful. So come and see Juliet then. Let me find myself here. Okay. And these are Joanne Acey, and she's showing 4 beautiful abstract paintings. They're in luminous color, and they're part of her new Dream series. You can see them in a series at the gallery. And Joanne, this new dream series has a new look. It's got a new color palette and even the presentation is different. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, thanks, Alan. I started this series a few years ago, and it started with several paintings and some drawings that were based on childhood memories. But I did call the whole series the Dream Series. And these works in particular, this section of the series is called Flying. And they are based on a reoccurring dream that I have since childhood of jumping on the sidewalk. We used to play outside of our homes in this neighborhood that I grew up in. And we played hopscotch and all those outdoor games. And this dream, I'm jumping, and each time I jump a little higher and then higher and higher until I'm actually flying. And so that's where the images come from. They also have a lot of symbolism in them. Some of you who know my work in general, even the piece behind me, there's always an element of what I call dwelling space. And they're also based on the kind of neighborhood that I grew up in, where everyone had a pointed slanted roof on their house. And no matter how far away you went up the hill, you could always pick out your own house. So the dwelling is a symbolism of those memories, but also of an inner dwelling space that comes from inside of you, a safe place.
Normally you don't title your series, but here you have given it a name. So is that going to be, are you going to be naming your series in the future, or did you just decide to
well, this series,
name this one?
it was both ways. Sometimes just the series of works from a particular time that I'm working, the pieces themselves have been given titles, which is pretty rare for me.
Yeah.
So the earlier works, which are a different medium, they're done in acrylic on paper, and those pieces actually have their own individual titles, even though they're part of the series. And those pieces are based on memories of childhood and songs that my father sang all the time, or the music that was played in our house. It was a very happy childhood, and just remembering some of the songs, Sunny Side of the Street, things like that. So those pieces that we're not seeing today are actually titled, but they're also part of the Dream series.
Are they also on this beautiful paper? I don't know if these paintings have been framed in a way that the just gorgeous deckled edge of the paper remains, and is really part of the just the dream in a sense. You know, it's kind of, it's like it's emerging from.
Yeah, I really, some of the series is not on this kind of paper. It's more of a sharp edge paper. And I was using acrylic, so it was a heavier paper. But I do love working on paper that has a deckled edge. So whenever I find a paper that I really know I can use, I'll go for the deckled edge if possible. And in this series, this paper, I don't even really know the name of it. I just came across it at Artists and Craftsmen, and it comes in all different shapes and sizes, which I really like. And I think that these are unframed. They're like 12 by 18 inches. And it's a very porous paper. It's like a watercolor paper. And it takes the kind of paint that I'm using during this part of the series. And there's a lot of transparency. So in my other parts of the series, or in even other kinds of work I've been doing, the color was much bolder, much more intense. And now I think I've watered it down in many areas and mixed colors differently. And it's a new material that I'm using called Flash.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about Flash because you've been using Flash paints now in this series, and it does give a very different, it has a very different color palette and quality. And I wonder, are you going forward, are you thinking about continuing painting with Flash paints or going back to acrylic, or can you combine them?
You can combine them. In this series, I
paint,
didn't
yeah.
combine them. In the Flying series, there's about
Yeah.
12 pieces in this series. But I do love the Flash, and it's a matte medium, so I don't get any shine. You can water it down. That image looks a little bit more intense, but I can get more transparency with this than I can with the acrylic. And for years, and I still do use gouache or watercolor paint. So this is sort of a throwback to the kind of colors that I used in other years. It's not really. I think people who have seen my work over the last few years see it as very different. But those of you who have known me since way back know that I did a lot of transparent watercolor in the past. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Great. Thank you. That's wonderful. Our third, yeah, do you want to go back through those? Terrific. Okay, K Sarrantonio is showing 4 prints in the show. Unfortunately, Kay can't be with us today. They're traveling to North Carolina for a 12-week residency. Kay has provided some written answers to questions, which I gave her, and I'm going to read them, and I'm going to try to do justice to them because some of their technique is complicated and beyond my limited capacity to understand. But I asked them about mixing the personal and the political. You talk about the personal and the political. You have characterized this work as gay or queer domesticity. Can you expand on that? And so this is what Kay responded. I would say that I'm exploring queerness and gender nonconformity in relationship to caregiving and parenthood with simple images from my everyday life. I'm representing elements of that experience from my own specific perspective, which makes it personal. But at the same time, everyday life as a queer family is political. It always has been, and in a lot of ways, it is right now more than ever. So in the print of the flannel shirts, I'm looking to show objects that represent my life in a warm and gentle way. On the other hand, in a piece like Recruiters, I'm responding to the idea that queer adults are dangerous to children with the hope that exposure to queer role models does indeed encourage young people to grow up and live happy gay and trans lives, while also poking fun at that idea of danger. I asked them about their process, and they replied that these are screen prints and they incorporate other elements. So Kay responded by saying that they studied photography, or I studied photography before I fell in love with printmaking. And more recently, I started working in video as well. So these prints are all based on photos or film stills. The Recruiters print, that's this one, is a combination of a duotone photo silkscreen process and CMYK photo silkscreen process combined with some stencil work. The No Place Like Homo print with flannel shirts. Susan, please. Yeah.
Sorry. Sorry. Oops. All right, let's see. Oh, no, sorry. Having a little technical difficulty here.
Okay.
Okay.
All
let's
right.
see.
Well, the No Place Like Homo print with the flannel shirts is also a CMYK process. So even though it looks fairly monochromatic, it's actually 4 layers of semi-transparent ink. And then the knives and the pregnancy print are both paper stencil prints. The pregnancy print uses some realistic metallic inks. Not realistic, it uses some metallic inks and incorporates what's called split fountain printing, which is when more than one color of the screen printing ink is blended together during the process of printing to create a gradient. And of course, the knife print has metallic leaf. I also like to use a lot of transparent base in my inks. That's how I created the shadow effect in the knife print. All of these prints are made in the same type, on the same type of craft colored Stonehenge paper, which is the criteria I use to select them as a group for this show. I think a lot about the tone of the paper I use for my work. And I asked Kay about their future plans. You have 2 residencies coming up, and do you have any idea of what your focus will be? And Kay responded, yes, I'm thrilled to be starting Monday at McColl Center in Charlotte, North Carolina, where I will be for the next 12 weeks. I will be working primarily in printmaking, but I'm hoping to do some welding and some digital fabrication as well. I'm also hoping to lead a screen printing workshop with a Charlotte-based LGBTQ+ youth organization. Then, as if that were not enough, that's my parenthetical. In the month of September, I will be doing the parent residency at Women's Studio Workshop in upstate New York, where I'm planning to work on similar themes to the work in this show while exploring screen printing on ceramic slabs. So Kay has a lot of projects on their plate right now, and I really wish they were here to expand on some of the technical aspects of their work. It's not something I have experience with, so I can't answer questions that you may have, but I'm hoping that if you put them in the chat or you ask them, there may be somebody in the audience, another artist, who can expand on that a little bit. But these are extraordinary prints, I have to say. And just again, to remind people that there's more in the flat files. Get them while they're hot. That's my, there's a lot of wonderful work in the flat files of all of these artists. And it's worth taking a look at as well. So now we have time for some questions, and Susan, you're the tech expert. Thank you. If people want to, is there anything in the chat? There's nothing in the chat. Good heavens, nothing in the chat. Okay, so if you just want to unmute and ask a question, does anyone have a question for Robin or Juliet or Joanne, or a question about Kay's work that I or someone else might be able to respond to?
I had a question that I would like to direct to Robin. Robin, I think you did touch upon this when you were speaking earlier, but I'm really interested, how when you are working on your pieces, like how does the pattern making and the narrative come together? Do you start with one, like with one way of working, and then the decorative comes into play, or the narrative comes into play, or vice versa, or do they happen at the same time?
I think mostly the patterns come first, because that's kind of like the substrate. It's the background, it's the substrate, it's what I'm building on. It's like a building block. So yeah, like it's not always pattern, but it's collage of some sort, and often it's pattern.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Well, I wanted to ask a question, Robin, or maybe make a comment. When you talked about the tabletop series.
Table talk.
Table talk. Oops, sorry. Table talk over the tabletop, right?
Right.
Anyway, table talk series, that they had started out as drawings, the figures, and then you talked about adding the architectural aspects, and immediately it clicked for me that these look like stage sets. They look like a certain kind of presentation that has become much more formal about whatever's going on within emotionally
Yeah, they really do. I mean, it wasn't really in my thoughts that they were a stage, but you're not the first person to say that that's how they look. They look like a stage set. And I guess there is that quality of acting, you know, of like acting a part, or um, yeah, I kind of, I like that that is what is coming through, even though I didn't really think about it in that way.
Great, thank you. And I think that's one of the amazing things about when we do make our work, we have our intentions, and then there are things that emerge that, you know, someone once said that, you know, making art is the process of finding out what you know that you didn't know you knew. And I thought that
Absolutely.
was a really beautiful
Absolutely.
way to put it. Yes.
I will often look at a painting and say, oh my God, that's where I've been. That's what I've been doing and thinking and feeling. And the painting is now expressing it, but I didn't know it.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah, absolutely.
Does anybody else have a question or comment, reflection for Robin or Juliet, Joanne? It's a very quiet group today.
I have a question.
Yes.
I would like to ask, and I'm sorry, I just totally forgot the name of the woman who's highlighted here, who just talked about her dreams in childhood.
Okay, Joanne Acey, yes.
I think I probably come from the same era, playing hopscotch and jumping jacks and all those games. Also in New York City, where I grew up. So that was very lovely to hear, because I feel like I can identify with that part. And then to have the dwellings there, somehow are very important to me, because home is always the most important thing for me. Where I live, what I do with my home, that it's always been a place that I saw, not just for me, but to share with others, friends and family. And so I just appreciate the work that you do. And I've not seen it, but it's beautiful. I do have a question, then I have another comment. Can you tell me again, is your medium watercolor, did you say?
The particular series, Flying, that we're looking at, that is called Flash, and it is a vinyl paint that is water soluble. The colors are very matte. I think I would liken it to gouache. It's more like gouache than it is a vinyl. I still haven't discovered why it's vinyl, but it is. But I just wanted to say thank you, Marion, that I kind of got a little emotional listening to you. I think that this part of the series, I started that like probably midwinter, and I'm still working on it into spring. And I think that after 2 years of being somewhat isolated, the whole image, the whole feeling, the whole emotion of home was also very much a part of how I was working. And I'm lucky to have a studio space where I could go off and not listen to the news. And I love winter, but I think I was longing for color again. And I think that's where part of the emotion of the work is coming from as well. But I think a lot of my work is based on my life, and the part of it that is most important to me, or the part that has brought me the most joy. So I'm very appreciative of your comment. Thank you.
Yeah, it's very melancholy for me to listen to, because I do painting on a very simple level, very simple, nothing compared to anybody who does the work there. But I do love color. And first of all, just looking at you with your beautiful green earrings and your green statues and the fantastic, it's just, but your paintings that you showed, really, it hit me very deeply thinking about my childhood and my parents, and just, it hit me very
Thank you
much.
very much. Thank you.
Yeah,
That
so
means a
thank
lot.
you. And then I do have a comment because Robin Roy is my best friend in the whole world.
Okay.
And I've known her forever, or it feels like it. And so Robin, as you know, I love your work. You're the most incredible artist. And just, I thought, well, do I need to listen today? I know Robin so well. Yes, I did need to listen to you, because it's always a new and more expanding experience to hear how your work is going, and just as beautiful.
Thank
And
you,
the
thank you,
other
thank you.
artists, the other artists, really wonderful also. So I thank you for inviting me to be here today.
Great.
I'm thrilled you're here.
I had a question for Juliet. Juliet, I kind of wanted to ask the same question that I asked Robin, because you're working with, two very different aspects within your work, the drawings that are kind of woven into them and the actual weaving behind and the fabric that you use. And I'm wondering, like, when you're creating the piece that the figures will go on, or whatever imagery you decide to put on top, is the planning for what's going to go on top part of how you bring things together, or does that come as a separate step afterwards? Oh, you're muted.
You're muted.
It's not necessarily one way or the other. It really depends on the piece, but generally speaking, I weave a bolt of fabric, and then I take whatever I've woven by hand and try to pair it with the machine-made tapestries. And a lot of times I'm like, with the piece that's showing I searched for flying, the figures I drew after putting together the background. I knew I wanted sort of an arc created by the fabric to sort of give this idea of falling. And then I draw every day. And I have notebooks and notebooks and notebooks, and I can go through them. And so those particular figures were taken, as I said, from when I did gymnastics. And so I have all these drawings of me as a child. And once I decided that I wanted this arc, it made a lot of sense to take these little gymnastic figures and have them tumble, off the canvas.
And in terms of the, I really love that you have words incorporated into your work. And I was also wondering about that, like, where does that come in? Is that something that after you have your imagery, that becomes a part of it, or does that start off earlier?
It's after the imagery is decided, and that's the last part of the piece. And it's funny, I often work in triptychs, and so I have to figure out what are 3 different ways to say the same thing. How am I going to convey this idea that my heart is broken because, all right, so now I'm going to say, you left me and my heart broke. And then I'm going to say, whenever I think of you, my heart cries. And coming up with those, my husband thinks I'm depressed all the time. I actually had a situation where a curator was looking at some pieces I did that were about the possibility of losing my husband to COVID. And the woman said, "I'm so sorry for your loss." And I went, "Oh, no.
I'm still here.
So I had to think of a way of somehow saying, "No, my husband isn't dead," so, as you can see now.
Yeah. I would just like to say something about being part of 440 Gallery. People ask us all the time, where does our inspiration come from? what influences us. People are always asking what artists influence you, and most times we reply that it's, someone famous, that, I mean, more famous than us. But I have to say that I am really appreciative of being a member of the gallery over the years, because I think I'm influenced by my fellow artists at the gallery. I mean, it was Janet Peterson who talked to me about using flash paint. And even in the project space, although our work is very different, and we're working with different media, I think that it comes together, and not only visually, but emotionally, politically. So I think that if you've never been to the gallery, please come, because it's really a great group of people who share so much with each other. So I just want to say, and Juliet and Kay are both brand new members, and I really feel great honor to be showing with them for the first time. So, and I'd like to welcome James. You're gonna love it. Okay, that's it.
Well, Joanne, don't put yourself, don't forget to mention that when we were trying to come up with a name for the show, and you said movement, and we all, yes, that's it. It's movement. And I mean, that was so rich in terms of each of us addressing movement in our own ways, and the contrast of your work to my work to Kay's work, they're so different, but once you have that umbrella of movement, I think they really accent each other in a way that wouldn't happen if our work was more similar.
Right.
Good point. Yeah. Does anyone else have a comment or question? Okay.
I have one more. I'm
Yes,
sorry.
yes, go for it.
I'm a blabbermouth today.
No, that's good.
Joanne, I wanted to ask you, do you ever listen to music that you like, that you grew up with while you're working?
Oh, I always did. And when I moved to the studio that I'm in now, the walls do not go all the way up, and there's no windows. So that took some time for me to get used to. And I know a lot of people wear those AirPods, and I actually have them, but I haven't hooked them up. But yeah, I do miss listening to music, and but I have to say I think it.
Yeah.
But if you've ever heard me sing, I can think it, but I can't sing it. It never even resembles anything that I'm thinking. But yeah, I think that we get into our head. And for me as an abstract artist, I don't always know where I'm going when I start. And I paint for a very long time, even on a small piece. So I think that I don't need the music to be there. I wish it was, but it's okay. Yeah.
I'm gonna get you started with those pods.
Yeah, thank you. I really need a technical assistant. Very, very. I actually have the pods. I just have never hooked them up because I don't.
Well, we'll work on that.
Yeah, I'm a painter.
Well, just before we finish up, I want to mention that two of our artists have work around town in other shows. Robin has work at the Osam Gallery, which is on 7th Street between 4th and 5th Avenue in Park Slope. And it is a show of Park Slope and Windsor Terrace artists. And she's also part of an exhibition called Among Friends at the Equity Gallery on the Lower East Side. So both of those are up now. And Juliet Martin will have a retrospective of her work in June on Persona Land. Is that the Persona Land Gallery online? So you can go to personaland.com and find it. And the next show at 440, which will open officially what we call the soft opening on Thursday, June 2nd, is Gail Flannery, Perennial. And in the project space, we'll have Fred Bentheim, Richard Barnett, and some work by me as well in a show called True to Form. And we realized after the fact, although we're all showing paintings, that we're all either current or former sculptors. So we might dig out some small work, sculpture, and have that there as well. But it is definitely something that ties it together. So the artist reception for the next show is Saturday, June 4th, from 4 to 7 p.m. And Robin, are you planning anything, closing of any kind for? Oh, you're muted. You're muted. Unmute.
You're muted.
Yeah, let's see.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
I just didn't want to unmute. We're not doing a closing. It's Memorial Day weekend,
Right.
and we're
We're
just closing.
okay. We're just
I'll
closing.
be there. I'll be there.
Okay, yeah, we'll be there. Very good. Okay, great. Well, I hope to see some of you in the gallery. Thank you so much for coming today, taking time on this gorgeous day. But it is, is it Marion? Yes, you said, and I think it's so true, that every time you can hear someone talk about their work, you will learn something new. And it's always a treat. So thank you to the artists and to Susan and her wonderful PowerPoint, and to everybody. So go be well. And oh, the next artist talk is June 19th. So there'll be lots of publicity about that. Okay.
Thank you, everybody.
Be well. Thank you. Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for coming.
Yes.
Thank you.